Has Bitcoin entered a super cycle? In this video, we will take a look at the Bitcoin protocol and how it works, and then we will take a look at the environment in which we are now and why it may be favorable to a potential Bitcoin super cycle. And toward the end of this video, I will also give out my own personal thought on a potential Bitcoin super cycle. By the way, welcome back to Chibind Brothers. My name is Joel. Please allow me to ask you to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, as it helps us with the YouTube algorithm to get our message to a wider audience. In order to understand the Bitcoin super cycle, we need to understand the Bitcoin cycle first. And so the Bitcoin cycle is correlated to the Bitcoin halvening, which is an important part of how the Bitcoin blockchain works. And so how does the Bitcoin blockchain works? It works based on a proof of work protocol. And this proof of work protocol basically relies on independent parties or miners to run complex mathematical problem solving algorithms that validates Bitcoin transactions and also the addition of new blocks to the Bitcoin blockchain. And when that happens, every time that a new block is added, a certain amount of Bitcoin are added into the supply. And those Bitcoin are paid to the miner who added or validated the last Bitcoin block. And so, how does this work? Let's just take an example of a notebook. And let's say that a notebook, in this case, is considered to be a block. And each page into that notebook is considered to be a ledger. And so what happens is when these complex mathematical algorithms are being ran by these miners, each transaction that is being made on the Bitcoin blockchain is being recorded into ledgers. And so as long as the Bitcoin block or the notebook is not full yet, then you still have a series of transactions that are being recorded until each ledger of the notebook or each page of the notebook are full. This means we have a full block. And this block is now prompted to be added to a series of other blocks that contains multiple transactions in them. And so the miner that is allowed to add this block is rewarded the amount of Bitcoin. And so now, typically the way that Bitcoin is Bitcoin has a limited amount of Bitcoin. There could only ever exist 21 million Bitcoin. And so what happens is, over time, the amount of Bitcoin that is being rewarded to these miners is getting cut in half. Hence, the Bitcoin halvening. And so we have had multiple halvenings that have happened in the past. So far, we've had 3. And so what happens here, especially with the halvening being correlated to the Bitcoin cycle, is that every 210,000 blocks, or approximately every 4 years, we have an halvening that happens. And in this case, the first halvening happened in 2012. And back then, when the halvening happened, what happened was the miners were being rewarded at the time 50 Bitcoins every time they had a new blockchain, a new block, should I say. And after the 2012 halvening, it got cut from 50 BTC to 25 BTC. And then the second halvening happened in 2016. And in 2016, the amount of Bitcoin being rewarded got cut off from 25 BTC to 12.5 BTC. And then the third and last halvening that has happened last year of 2020 in May, and the supply of Bitcoin got cut off from 12.5 to 6.25. And so what is the reason why we go through these cycles of the supply of Bitcoin getting cut off? The idea here is that to create a currency that can store value. For us to be able to have a currency that stores value, the supply of the amount of Bitcoin or the amount of that currency that is being added into the circulation has to be decreasing over time. And so what happens here is that because the supply is decreasing over time, but over time the amount of users is increasing, That means low supply, high demand, thus the price increases exponentially. And this is basically the idea behind the Bitcoin halvening. So now, with what I just explained, is every time that Bitcoin has experienced an halvening, Bitcoin has went on to experience massive gains and then will also experience sharp pullbacks in the range of even as high as 85%. And this happened after the first bull run in 2012 and then the second bull run in 2017. But then with the Bitcoin Super Cycle that we are talking about now, is that the idea is that we may not be going into such pull back as we've seen into the past, because now there is a lot of changes and a lot of things that have been added to the equation. So now let's jump into what those things are. The first case for a Bitcoin super cycle is the 2020 sickness. And so with the 2020 sickness, what happened is many and major governments around the world went into massive spending and money printing. For example, in the United States, the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the United States, through their quantitative easing program, they literally expanded their balance sheet by a factor of 2, meaning that the money supply was expanded by 2. That is crazy. And so what happens here is that the more supply that is being added and pumped into the system, the more the currency of the country is being devalued. In this case, the United States dollar. And so if the United States dollar or USD is being devalued, and the fact that Bitcoin was created as a store of value, many people would be running into Bitcoin and invest in there so that they can store their value and keep the value of their money. And the other thing is that what is very unprecedented is we now have many institutions that are coming into the Bitcoin market, from companies such as MicroStrategy, led by Michael Saylor, or even Tesla, led by Elon Musk, companies such as Square, led by Jack Dorsey, who's the Square CEO and the Twitter CEO, and many other institutions, and even such as hedge funds. For example, Bridgewater Associates, which is Ray Dalio's hedge fund and the world's biggest hedge fund. All of these people and many other institutions, from even the major US banks such as JP Morgan, have been speaking and talking positively of a new Bitcoin adoption. And then, so when we have companies such as the one that I just named earlier, the Tesla, the MicroStrategy, putting a portion of their reserves into Bitcoin, that changes the equation. Because back in the days, within the last bull market in 2017, we didn't have mass adoption by institutional investors. And the thing too with institutional investors is that these people, they are not here to speculate. They are not here for a quick buck. This kind of smart money typically invest for the long term, with a long-term outlook. So they're not here to trade. And they also have massive, and I repeat, massive buying power. And so, assuming that these people are going to be hodling Bitcoin for a long time, technically the case here is that Bitcoin should be keeping its value. The next reason is the surge in retail investors' interest. Due to the 2020 sickness we experienced, and that is still kind of going on until now, is that many people realize that the world in which we were living in and in which we are still living in is changing, and many people started becoming interested in different investments, and people started jumping into the stock market, and people started jumping into the cryptocurrency market. And so with the surge in retail investors investing, especially into Bitcoin, this is also bullish, because retail investors also constitute a large buying power. Of course, the buying power cannot be compared to the institutional type of investors, but this is still a considerably large amount of money that is flowing into Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market in general. And the next thing too is, if we look at how buying digital assets or cryptocurrency has been back into the past, and now is that now it has been made easy to be able to buy digital assets. People can literally easily buy digital assets on their phone using exchanges such as Coinbase, or even using brokerages such as Robinhood. People can now buy Bitcoin using PayPal. People can buy Bitcoin using Cash App. So it's been made easy for people to access the market and buy. That means there is much more liquidity now than we had in the previous Bitcoin cycles or in the previous Bitcoin bull runs. And that right there completely changes the equation for Bitcoin as well. With everything that I just said, the idea for this Bitcoin super cycle is that we may not see large Bitcoin pullbacks like during the last two bear markets of Bitcoin, where Bitcoin dropped down 85%. You know, it's normal for any assets to correct, but we may not have to go through those sharp corrections. Is basically the idea of this super cycle. And the idea is that Bitcoin might be going much higher. Especially some people are calling for 100,000 Bitcoin. Some people are calling for 200,000 Bitcoin. And not just people, but this also includes institutions. Some are even calling for 1 million Bitcoin. This is crazy. But now, what are my thoughts on the super cycle? My thoughts are this. I understand that the macro picture behind cryptos and Bitcoin now has changed because of the mass adoption that we are seeing right now. But does that mean that I am putting this super cycle into my strategy of how I'm going to be scaling out of the crypto market in 2021? No. In my head, I am still going with the idea that we're going to see a bear market and that Bitcoin and the other altcoins are going to see sharp pullbacks. And that's just how I'm going with. But then I will be glad if they don't go through such a cycle again. But for just myself to be safe and for myself to be able to actually capitalize on the gains that I've made, I will keep going on the assumption that we're still going to see a sharp pullbacks. So now, please, I would like to say this. Anything that is said in this video should not be considered as financial advice, but for educational purposes only. Now, if you would like to start investing into the stock market and don't have an account with Webull, you can sign up for a Webull trading account using our Webull link in the description below. And when you sign up and deposit at least $100, we both get 2 free stocks. Or you can go into a passive investing route and you can sign up for a new account with N1 Finance with our link in the description below. And when you sign up and deposit at least $100, we both get $30. Or for you to be able to invest in Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency market, you can sign up for a new Coinbase account using our link in the description below. And when you sign up and deposit at least $100 and buy at least $100 worth of cryptocurrencies, then we both get $10 worth of Bitcoin. Or you can sign up for a BlockFi account using our link in the description below. And when you sign up and deposit your Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency on there, you can get up to $250. Now, I hope that I provided you with enough value in this video. If that was the case, please allow me to ask you to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, as it helps us with the YouTube algorithm to get our message to a wider audience. With that being said, I'd like to say thank you, and I'll see you in my next video on Sunday. Bye.